Hey everyone, quick little announcement here from Fishing the DMV. Our Weekend Warrior package on Patreon is almost full. There are only 39 spots still available. Once these spots are gone, they're gone, and the Weekend Warrior tier will be closed to the general public. All members will be locked in indefinitely at a fantastic price point, and they will get all the benefits that they have today, plus any new benefits and discounts that will be added in the future. All Weekend Warriors will receive 5% off their orders to Jerkbait and Tackle, 10% off their orders to Tiger Crankbaits, 10% off their orders to Catoctin Creek Rod. They'll also gain access to our private Facebook group community, loads of members-only content. And in 2025, there are going to be tournaments that will be given a massive discount specifically to our Weekend Warrior members. Plus, if you sign up for the year right now, you will get 8% off your already fantastically discounted rate to join the Weekend Warrior program. Link in the episode description. Thank you.
Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never disappointed out here, because I don't expect anything, because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
A sniper's dream, 100 bites of memory. He has me forehead, and after head goes grace vertical. No matter who he races, he gonna have a head start. From too low, from too low. Remembers what happened to Mom. His father stands on the second floor. Why can you still see his forehead with the comments open? Shut his eyes. He got a lot on his mind. He's been told to hold that thought all his life. Gross sweat tries before it reaches his eyes. He needs lines. Gross imaginations in 4K Ultra HD. If you do an inch on his forehead, Bobby will survive. His forehead says 6'5", but his eyes say 5'9". The most epic heroic song of all time. Gross forehead has a national anthem.
Bro knew this would happen.
Hell yeah! Angler's choice, baby! John Morris! White River! Ranger! Triton! Nitro! Let's go, baby! Woo!
What the hell is even that?
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jerkbait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good evening. Welcome back to Monday Night Live. Hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend, ate some turkey, didn't get into too many arguments, watched your favorite football team not suck. I know the Packers did extremely well, and my Redskins, who I guess family adopted, since my family has been watching them for about 7 generations, they finally didn't suck, which is a really cool change of events. We still can't kick a field goal to save our lives. Apparently that's extremely hard to find one white guy in the Eastern Coast that can actually kick a field goal. So whatever, here it is. So today we got a wonderful show. I have an absolute fantastic guide that has been killing it on the New River for God knows how long. One thing before we get started, the Patreon members only tournament is in full gear. Right now, we've only had one 20.25 inch smallmouth recorded. And I think that was from the Upper Potomac. And this is out of Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina. We have this big bass event going on. Still time to sign up if you want to. I'm completely surprised that in the last 4 days, we haven't had a 21-incher break the scales yet when it comes from the smallmouth side. But anyway, we'll get into that a little bit later. Without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Ethan Stone. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
But it's been a long time since you've been on the show. What's been going on in your life?
Not too much. Another good year guiding. It was probably my best year ever. We had a great year, caught a bunch of great fish, took a bunch of great people fishing. got married in August, so that's been a big change. But now we're just looking ahead to 2025. I think it's going to be another real good one.
So you got married in August, thinking like things are going to go up from here, and then your area of the country got absolutely smacked down with the weather.
Yeah, that was a crazy storm. Once in a generation. It was the highest that our river had gotten since 1940.
Wow.
The river went up about 31 and a half feet. So usually our gauge height is about 2.5 feet, and it crested at 33 and a half. So you can think of 33 extra feet of water coming through the river was pretty remarkable. But it was very dry after the storm. It took about 10 days or 2 weeks for the water level to get back into a normal range, and probably like about a month for the clarity to start clearing up. But even before the clarity cleared up, we had probably like the best October I'd ever had in real muddy, silty water. I just think that eventually the water kind of stayed brown for so long that those fish had to start eating again, and they were actually pretty susceptible because the last few falls has been real dry and we've dealt with real low and clear water. So this fall was just kind of a total different type of fishing.
I want to get some of the softball questions out of the way when it comes to the hurricane, the high water. I saw this on Facebook in all the comment sections. Did it blow all the fish away? Is the river completely dead? Like, how did that affect it?
Not from what I've seen. I mean, I was scared. I saw the river and I just am like, what do the fish do in something like this? And it was about close to 2 weeks before I caught a fish again because it was just so high. But once the leveled out, we had a great October, caught a ton of fish, a lot of nice fish. Actually, the thing that scared me the most is right when I got back out on the new, we were like only catching real big fish because the water was still only about 8 inches of visibility. And, sometimes the littler fish just don't bite in that. But kind of as the water got clearer and clearer, we started catching fish, the little ones that I thought would have been the most susceptible to dying. We started catching the 6 to 12 inchers again. So that was good. But one of our guides had a 4 citation day about 3 weeks after the hurricane. I had an 101 inch best 5 day about 3 weeks after the hurricane. So the fish are still there and they're still in the same spots that they've always been. And honestly, the river some spots that were kind of silty or had silted in kind of just got flushed. And some really good areas that I'd noticed silt had kind of been accumulating and making the areas not quite as good kind of got dug out. And so, I'm looking forward to next year.
That is an interesting thing to bring up, that there was a positive effect to it where it did probably flush out some of those areas on the river. And then, as always, guys, what we're going to be doing here is we're in a little while, I'll open up the phone lines. The phone lines are going to be 667-307-8583. First caller will win a gift card to Jerkbait and Tackle. And I'll also give away some cards in the comment section for the best questions of the night. And it doesn't just have to be about the new river. Ethan's been fishing for a little bit of time. So anything river smallmouth fishing, I know we have the tournament. Everyone's out on the river. I guess the first thing when it comes to segueing into this time of the year, broad perspective, how much of it is smallmouth versus musky right now?
The musky obviously do really bite in the winter months, but we smallmouth on the new, they bite well all year. Once you kind of find their winter pattern and spots, they bite really well. But if you want to catch a musky from now until about March is probably your best time.
If you were going to go out in Florida and you said, I want to go catch tarpon on the flats, or if I wanted to drive out and go catch false albacore, that's 2 different days, 2 different strategies. If somebody wanted to come fish for musky or smallmouth, is that kind of the same thing, or can you kind of pack for both on a day?
I don't usually do that. Usually in the time of year where you want to be catching a muskie anyway, you have a really good chance at one on bass gear. I remember a day this March, we caught 5 muskie bass fishing. So we catch a lot of muskie just while we're bass fishing on kind of in the colder weather months. In the summer when I'm bass fishing, you don't really want to be catching muskie anyway, because once the water temperature gets too high, they have delayed mortality a lot of the time. So yeah, in the spring, you can catch some while you're bass fishing. In the summer, you don't really even want to catch any while you're bass fishing. And if you're muskie fishing, I always tell people to just commit to muskie fishing, because they call muskie the fish at 10,000 casts. If you're thinking like, maybe I should switch to bass fishing after every cast, you're probably not going to be patient enough and put in the time to actually catch a nice one.
How thick? I remember just talking to Hallecker and Blue Ridge Muskie, was it last year, I think, at this time. There is allegedly per acre more muskie in the new than other rivers, correct? Where they're thick there.
Yeah. Well, that is true. I think I saw that there were it's about 1.5 in the James and about 3 point something in the new per mile. Of mature size, but the new is a lot bigger than the James, than the upper James. The part of James that has muskie. The new is a much bigger river than that area. So I would like to know on a per volume. I bet they'd be close to the same, because the new is about twice as wide as the upper James.
That's a very, very good point. I didn't even think about that. And then, are you specifically in the area below the dam at Claytor Lake, above, or all of it?
Downstream of the Claytor Lake Dam, but north, which is weird to think about on a map. But yes, downstream of Claytor Lake.
Interesting. So we've got a couple of questions here. We'll get these answered here. B Cal here's got a question. What is the best time to come for smallmouth fishing on the new, and the best time for muskie? And then again, guys, I'll award the question winners at the end. I know last time I got in trouble with that. Just because I give your question doesn't mean you automatically win the prize. So anyway.
So we usually catch our biggest smallmouth of the year in March, I'd say, is when you have your best shot at one. A lot of people like coming in March. That's when I think you're going to catch your fish of your lifetime. A lot of people love April because the size is still really, really good, but you're starting to get a little more quantity than March. You're catching more fish than March. May and June were just exceptional topwater fishing this year. Some of my favorite days were in May and June. We had a day where we caught about 90 fish, and I think all but about 10 or 12 of them were on topwater. And then the fall can be really good. Last year, we actually caught our biggest fish of the year in October. This year, we caught a ton of nice citation fish in October. So really, there's not a bad time to be here for smallmouth. For muskie, you're looking at the winter months, the coldest months. A lot of people say February and early March are the best, because that's kind of the pre-spawn for them.
That's really, really good information there. I'll get this one more. I'll wait on that question, actually, because I want to get into your information that you've been documenting on the smallmouth and the new, because I think it's kind of fascinating. And really, just to tee it off for you, what possessed you to try to document all that you did?
I don't know. I just kind of did it a little bit last year. I wasn't really diligent on it, but it's kind of good, I think, to just have a resource. As a guide, you always kind of want to stay one step ahead of the fish. And if you go out there and struggle one day, you got to go out there the next day. It's nice to have a resource to look back on and be like, what was I doing this time last year? What were the fish doing this time last year? What was I catching them on when the water temp was the same as last year? So I documented kind of how I did each day, and then I also kind of documented how many citation smallmouth me and my clients caught, which has been 124 this year so far. So it's been a real real good year, over 100 citations.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's just for me and my clients. Our other guides also caught a bunch. So the New River was really showing out this year.
So just for Hollywood and the recording, just for people that are listening on the re-upload, you said just you personally on your raft 124 citation smallmouth. That's
Yep, me and my clients. I kind of did it like on my days fun fishing, and then my guided trips. My boat saw 124, so it was good. We had a class of fish that they were like 18 inches 2 years ago and about 19 inches last year, and I was like, there are going to be a lot of right on the nose 20 inches this year, and there were. I mean, there's always 21, 22s as well, but there is such a strong year class of fish that are like we're 20 and a quarter about this year.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. And then, guys, what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to open up the phone lines. First caller on the show will win a $15 gift card to Jerkbait and Tackle. If you ask a good question. The number is 667-307-8583. And I'll throw that up on Instagram too, since I can't share messages there. We got a couple of great comments right here. Let's see. We got Big DTV. Winter Smallmouth is so fun. If you're willing to, yeah, that's 100%. If you get out there, you will be rewarded. We got another one here. That's good. Rodney French says, can you safely run a bass boat there on the New River?
I would say not really on hardly any stretches of the New River. You can on Clater Lake, but the New River is just so, it's kind of different than a lot of rivers. It just, you'll think you'll be fine, and then a ledge will come up to just under the surface. There's a lot of ledge rock. So you'll be in a real deep pool feeling good, and then a ledge will run all the way across the river, kind of just under the surface. And so nobody really runs bass boats on our section of the river. No.
We got a question on Instagram here. Blunt Z3. I fish the Susquehanna River in the wintertime. How much time do you typically spend on a winter hole before you bounce if it's a brand new hole you've never been to before?
That's a good question. And I like that question because I think a lot of people find a winter hole or two and they just pound it throughout the winter until there's like not many fish left. So what I enjoy doing in the winter is just kind of moving on and finding more and more spots, which it sounds like is what this guy is asking. And I usually, it's kind of variable, but I usually go with a moving bait first, which in like the dead of winter, one of my favorite moving baits is just like a wigglewort style bait. And I fish it just really slow. I tell people I fish the crankbait like a jig. You reel it to the bottom, you use some fluorocarbon so it's still kind of almost suspending. And then when you get it to the bottom, I kind of just move it with my rod through the rocks and then catch up on my reel real quick and then just move it. And when I feel it really grinding and getting into gnarly stuff, just kind of pause it. And that's one of my favorite ways to fish in the winter. So I usually canvas it with a few casts with the wigglewort. If I don't get it on that, I love throwing a little football jig in the winter. Something like this with a rage craw on it or something.
What weight? Because I know it's all relative. Like the Susky, I think the rumor is it's a mile wide and a foot deep, and the new is like almost 30 feet in some points. But
the new, if it's real low or you're fishing a spot that's real shallow, you can get away with a quarter. I like a 3/8. This is like the 3/8 queen tackle peanut jig. I love this thing. But then honestly, sometimes this one is one on Tackle Warehouse. Forget what it is, but it's a tungsten, but it's a 1/2 ounce, but it's so small. It's like no bigger than the 3/8 peanut jig. So yeah, those are the ones I really like. Kind of a thing I found about winter fishing to answer this question too is Britt Stoudemeyer, who is a guide here at New River Outdoor Company, the founder of New River Outdoor Company. Something he taught me was in the winter, especially if you roll into a spot and you get just slammed, be it on the crankbait or just a boom, he said, and I've found this to be so true, that usually means there's other fish in the area and they're kind of being competitive coming over. So if you cast the crankbait out there, something slams it, and then you take a few more casts with the crankbait, don't get anything, that's when I'd slow down with the jig. And then if you get a real soft bite where you're like, is this grass or a fish? One of those winter bites that's just real kind of soft and lousy. That's kind of less of a sign that there's probably other fish around because it wasn't really being aggressive to coming towards your bait.
Interesting. Yeah, I've thought about that too. Especially when you're talking about the hole size and how many fish are there, that do the bigger fish, at least on the new, I think it does depend. I think it's river by river basis, but do the bigger fish seem to stack by themselves versus, I know in some rivers, if you catch one, there's probably more. Like, do you see a tendency in how they behave?
I think the big fish do sit separate from most of the fish. And usually it seems like the biggest fish is the first one you catch out of the hole, or sometimes like the first one after a bait change. But if you roll into a hole, you've caught 3 17-inchers, boom, boom, boom. That, I mean, this is obviously, but I feel like that's less of an inclination that there could be a big one around. Usually my big fish in the winter roll up to a spot. One of the first few casts is the biggest fish, and then the size kind of goes down from there.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We got a bunch of comments, guys. I'll make sure I'll get to all of them. And at the end of the show, I will make the announcement for the winner of the prizes. Got Bass and the Furious. Again, Ty has a great freaking YouTube channel, social media following. Go check him out. He's got 2 questions back to back. And never been to the new. It sounds pretty awesome. Go on down there. It is the Jurassic Park of Virginia when it comes to rivers. Yeah, how long do you like to spend in a spot? He says about 10 minutes. But yeah, you like to fish fast, dude. I was one of the 124 that caught Citations Smallmouth with Ethan. He's a great guide. Let's get through all of the. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I think it's the one. We saw a school of catfish that I kid you not had to have been at least 1,000 of them. Never seen that many. He's talking about the Shenandoah River. Yeah, I don't know if that's as big of a problem on the new as it is on the Shenandoah and Upper Potomac with just the amount of channel cats you can get stacked in pockets.
Yeah, not really. I see channel cats down in the water sometimes. You know, there's people that fish for them and they catch them. But I did not catch a channel cat last year. And, you know, over 150, 175 days of bass fishing. So we catch usually maybe 5 flatheads a year, you know, in well over 100 days. So catfish aren't too big of an issue here on the new.
Now, and is that the same thing with flatheads? And then again, guys, I still have a gift card to give away. We're going to give away a $20 gift card to Jerkbait and Tackle to a phone call in listener because we don't have a flathead issue necessarily up on the Shenandoah, the Upper Potomac. Susquehanna, that's a completely different can of worms. But they're not an issue there on the new, which is interesting.
Not really. I think they're native to the new, which I don't think they are to some other rivers. But yeah, I mean they're in there, but they don't really affect the bass fishing.
Let's see. We got a Instagram question here. His name is Dan Weber. Was Dan Weber the coolest guide you ever worked with?
He was probably up there. He should come back and keep guiding would be my answer to him.
Oh, there we go.
Dan is a good guy, another Hokie Bass alum that guided for us for a few years.
Let's see. We got another one here. Let's see. Here we go. Went out with Brian Peeler yesterday. Great guy. What tips do you have and recommend throwing this time of year with 40-degree water and over 15 feet of visibility?
That's not my favorite conditions. If it's cold, I like it to be stained a little bit. Seems like if it gets super low and clear and cold is when it can be tough. But what I'd say, I talked about the jig earlier. Pretty much the water is super clear. I'll go from that jig to our buddy, the tube. Just a little. I throw that 2 3/4 inch Mismo teaser tube.
Put it on that
This
side of the
is
screen.
like
There we go.
my go-to in clear cold water, and then just probably your jerkbait, pretty clear, clear color, and just really really slow and methodical. As far as line, if it's 15-foot visibility, I would go something real finesse like 10-pound fluorocarbon or something like that. But yeah, I just in that clear of water, you really want to look for some of like your deepest wintering holes. I think they tend to move deeper the clearer it gets, kind of. At least on the new, they do. I think when it's that clear, they're scared to get super shallow because they're scared of musky and they're scared of eagles and ospreys looking down at them. So I'd say if the water's super low and clear, kind of look for your deepest holes.
And I know right now we have, let's see, we got about 20 people watching on Instagram. We got about 40 between Facebook and YouTube. A lot of you guys are spread out between the Susquehanna, Upper James, the New, the Upper Potomac Shenandoah, tons of river rats in this area. What is the definition of a wintering hole? I mean, I feel like that is subjective, like you said. Is it the size of the slack break, or can it be super small and it's just basically hit them all until you figure it out?
What I look for is some sort of reduced current area. I think a lot of people think they got to be fishing a totally slack eddy, which is not the case. I have a lot of wintering holes that have a little bit of current coming through them, but you definitely don't want an area with like faster than average current. So either like slow to no current or just a slow gradual current. I usually look for anything more than about 5 feet deep. I know I just answered that guy's question saying to fish super deep, but if you have kind of stained water or cloudy conditions, they'll get shallower than you think they would in the winter. As long as there's access to deeper water. I wouldn't say they'd be in 5 feet if it's 5 feet all around that. But if there's a 5-foot hole where they can easily get into 10 or 12 feet, I think that's perfectly fine. And then the most important thing I think in the winter is just really chunky rock bottom, just real, not like gravel, not any sand or silt, just boulder, hard rock bottom.
When do they like to, I mean, anecdotally, I've seen on the Shenandoah, the Upper Potomac, where for some reason, some days they're like, I just want wood. I don't know why. They just will tend to go to wood. Is that something that you've seen just anecdotally when you've gone out guiding?
Not really.
Interesting.
The new, and for everybody that hasn't fished the new, this is kind of hard to. The new just has so much good rock cover that they just don't really relate to the wood. There's a few real slack areas where they will get up on wood, but the new just has so much good rock cover for them to be in. I mean, sometimes if you're fishing an eddy that's, pretty big, maybe where the laydown is will be the best spot in the eddy. But I'd say current and rock on the New River are both more important than wood.
All right, we got a bunch more questions here. Good Lord. Hold on. Where did that one go? Fishing Keebs on Instagram says, are you downsizing presentations at all during the winter? And if you are, when?
I'm probably only downsizing when the water is super low and clear. I really don't downsize at all. I mean, there's so many big fish on the New River. Like, I mean, if you want to catch a 4 or 5 pound smallmouth on the New River, you throw the same things you would to catch a 3 or 4 pound largemouth,
But they never want peanuts, is what you're saying.
No, not really. So like I showed you guys that jig earlier. If I feel like the conditions are good, if we got some stain, I'll throw that jig. But I'll throw the tube if it's super low and clear. But no, I try not to downsize because I just feel like you never know when you're downsizing yourself out of getting that 5 or 6 pound bite.
Tyler, if you remember this story, please call on in. Tyler of High Pole Guy Services said, can you ask Ethan if he remembers when we got shot at fishing together?
Yeah. That was a crazy story. We had a hokey bass tournament on Lake Mumaw, and some interesting fellas came running up out of the woods shooting at us. So that was a crazy story. Tyler did a great job getting us out of there in that crazy situation, but it took us a while to kind of realize what was going on. But I mean, it was like within feet of us. So that was a crazy situation.
So wait, were you the boater? Was he the boater? Like, whose boat was this?
The boater. He was the boater, and we were fishing a creek arm that was probably about 100 or 150 yards across. So we were fishing like a creek arm, and we were coming down the left side of the creek. And on the right side of the creek, and I mean, we're back in like the national forest, the woods, nothing. And on the right side of the creek, there's like a shanty town would be my best way to describe it. Just a bunch of like sheets hanging in the trees and such. And Tyler and I were talking about what we thought it was. And then like kind of right then, this guy came out from behind one of the sheets, but it was like too far away for us to like see that he was like holding a gun and shooting at us. Then he just started shooting. And I mean, just kind of spraying all around the boat, splashing up in the boat. You know, you could hear the whiz. It sounded like bees were flying near the boat. And Tyler and I just kind of both dropped on the deck of the boat. And Tyler actually like drove the boat from sitting down under the console and got us up out of there. But it was a very crazy situation.
Did you guys like fish the rest of the day, or did you guys just like have a moment where you just sat there like, what the hell just happened?
We went in and contacted the authorities, and they kind of found the people that did it, but didn't want to like confront them really. There were a lot more people there than they were expecting, I think. And I think they kind of got there and were very outnumbered. And
oh my God.
Yeah. So, yeah.
You think it was like a moonshine or some kind of like meth lab?
I think it was probably drug related. Yes. Yeah.
Good God. I mean, minus that, how was the fishing that day?
I can't remember how we were doing it. It happened real early in the morning, I think, like real early. But I've had good days at Mumaw since then. I conquered my fear. I've gone on with Nolan a couple times since then and conquered my fear at Lake Mumaw.
That's good to know. Nolan still knows how to catch a bass, and he's not just completely a salty now. You didn't fire back. Dude, they were in college, man. I don't think
this was a long time ago.
Only D-Day survivors can relate. Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's actually pretty true. Being on a boat while you're just getting sprayed at.
Do you have any other stories that can even come close to that one?
I got some good stories. That's a crazy one. Oh, man. Yeah, I'm going to think of like 20 stories later today. I mean, this isn't a great story, but this is just one that I always think was funny. I got out at a boat ramp this year and was taking the boat out of the water. And there was like a kind of like a big family get-togethers. The boat ramp is like a nice like beach, and it's a good place to get in the river in the summer. And there were a lot of kids running around, swimming in the water and such. And so I was loading the boat up. I saw a kid get a bottle of like Orange Crush or Fanta out of his parents' cooler. And I saw him just dump it on the thing, fill his bottle up with river water, and he just started going nuts on that thing. Me and my clients saw it, and we were like, oh, man.
Oh,
yeah.
My God.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. And then we just had a bunch of – you always see something cool on the new, whether you see a muskie in the water or you got all sorts of eagles and ospreys and otters and stuff. So, yeah. Yeah.
It's like Jurassic Park. That's why I keep telling people about the new. Is the allure of it. It's like it's not developed. Like examples like the Upper Potomac from like Point of Rocks down. You're next to the three richest counties in the world. It's insanely populated. The James River flows right into Richmond. The new is like Jurassic Park. There's just not a lot around in certain sections.
Yeah, definitely less pressure than the James or the Shenandoah or the Potomac, I would say for sure.
Do you have a lot of experience on any of those other places?
Not really. I fished the Shenandoah some as a kid. I'll fish the Upper James, kind of not different area than kind of where you're talking, kind of upstream of Lynchburg. I fish there a lot for fun fishing, or it's kind of my backup plan for if the new is blown out. But yeah, other than that, I mainly stick to the new.
Oh, we got Big D asking about the New River. Are there good launches to fish around within a mile up or down river with a yak?
Yes, so the new I would say is very accessible. Doing a great job. There's a lot of ramps. There's usually a ramp every 3 or 4 miles. Some places there's ramps within a mile of each other, like he's saying. But yeah, the new is very accessible. There are big rapids, so if you are doing a float trip, make sure you've kind of scouted and know what to expect, because there's a few class 3 rapids in our area.
Mm. How cold is too cold? Like when does the bite shut off, or does it ever shut off?
I mean, if you're fishing a good enough spot, it doesn't. I would say it doesn't ever really shut off. I would say I've had good days as cold as like 38. I mean, you probably want it to be 40 to feel really good about it. I mean, you can catch them in the 30s. I wouldn't ever. I mean, people that fish up on like the Susquehanna are probably going to be like, "Oh, we slay them in the 30s." Here, I would say you can catch them in the 30s. You don't start slaying them till the 40s, and then I would say usually the winter bite kind of transitions to the pre-spawn bite around 45 degrees. And I mean, that's subject. Like if you get a real abnormal warm stretch in January or February and it hits 45, that's not going to be the start of the pre-spawn. But usually it starts hitting 45 beginning of March or so down here. The past few years has been early. Past few winters have been real mild. So I used to always kind of think the one of the best pre-spawn runs for the biggest fish has always kind of been the last 2 weeks of March. The past couple of years, it seems like it's been the first couple weeks of March. But that could change, if we have another cold winter this winter. But yeah, 45 to 55 degrees. I'd say like 40 to 45 is your prime winter fishing, and 45 to 55 is like the prime pre-spawn.
What would you call like winter in your area? Is it December? Would you call this more late fall right now and true winter like January?
It's pretty cold already. Here, I'd probably call this winter. I usually, from mid-November to like New Year's, can be good fishing. I know people that love fishing this time of year. It's probably the time of year I fish the least, just because I've kind of come off a year of guiding. And just usually in our area, for some reason, we don't really get the late fall rain. It just always seems to be super low and clear in November and December. Then usually in January, we start getting some heavy rains, which takes the water level up, starts making it kind of better conditions. And I usually kind of start fishing quite a bit in January, and then I fish a ton in February. So, yeah, I like that kind of late winter the most, I would say.
Let's see, we got a couple more good questions here. Brandon says, how does the full moon affect fish in the winter?
I don't really consider the full moon in the winter. I consider the full moon in the spring a ton.
Interesting.
In the winter, I haven't noticed a huge impact. In the spring, I have found that you got to look at like all the full moons, and you got to really fish the spawning areas hard in the full moons that you think are still way ahead of the spawn. So I found that I call it like the fake spawn or the mock spawn always happens on like the last full moon in March, or if there's a full moon right at the beginning of April. I found that's usually when the fish pair up and they start making their bed, or at least kind of claim their bedding area. And it always seems like there's like a 3-day run where I catch fish in the spawning areas. Their partner will follow them to the boat. And I always think like, oh man, they're spawning real early, like a month early this year. And then after a few days, it's gone and they're kind of back to their winter or pre-spawn spots. And then the next full moon is when they actually come up to like spawn and stay there. So the full moons, I'd say the full moons bring the fish shallow from about March on. And then the full moons are always a driving force to bring them up. This year we had a full moon like April 12 or something, and some of the biggest fish started to spawn. Then we had a full moon like the last day of April or something, and that was like the that's when like a ton of the fish came up to spawn. And then I kind of thought the spawn was all done, and there was another one like May 20th or something, and actually a few more big fish like came up to spawn then. So I would say the March full moon is a good time to kind of start looking at your spawning areas. And then the April and May full moons actually will draw them up to spawn.
Interesting. How much of that also has to do with like the dam, you think? Because when you're pulling water from the lake, it's keeping the temperatures suppressed, colder. Does that have anything to do with it, you think?
Well, like all our water comes from the lake.
That's true.
So there's not any like variation. Like all the water gets drawn out of the bottom of the lake. We don't have any like spillage over the top or anything. So the water temperature, I mean, if they move a lot of water, the water temperature can change a little bit. But I've also found that unless the conditions are very strange, the fish kind of regulate every year. They do things at a pretty similar time. I think that the photo period, which is the length of daylight, actually they key in on that more than people give credit to.
I 100% agree with you. That's been my cockamamie mushroom thought process in like September. It's like, well, how do they know fall's coming? And it's like, well, it has to be the daylight because the vegetation dies off, deer start moving. They know shit's happening when it gets darker. I just wish in 2024 going into 2025, someone could figure out like, is there a time range? Like when it gets dark at 6 versus 7, that's the snap that makes them start changing. I mean, do you see like a lot of like vegetation blow down the new in the fall? Do you have that happen? Okay.
A ton. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's always wild to me. All right, guys, we got a couple more questions here and then we're going to wrap this show up. We got another question here on the old Instagram. Papa Smith says, what is your favorite cadence for winter jerkbait fishing?
If we're talking like true winter fishing, like February, water temperature less than 45, it's like pop, make sure your line is slack, and then like find something else to do for a minute, and then pop, just real slow. A mistake I see a lot of people make is they keep their line too tight, especially on river fishing. This doesn't come into play as much when you're lake fishing, and I'll try to, but if you keep your line too tight while you're jerkbait fishing and then you give it a long pause, that bait is going to drift away from you in the current, and eventually your line's going to come all the way tight and it's going to start wobbling instead of staying dead still. So I keep a ton of slack in my line when I'm fishing it real slow in the wintertime, because you want it to have enough line out to where your bait is getting carried away from your boat naturally in the current, instead of getting carried away to a point, your line getting tight, and then that thing starts swimming on you. So sometimes even I'll like cast out pop, pause, open my bail up, let the current take the bait away from me a little bit, close my bail, pop, open it up, let it, and that does well for me in the wintertime. And sometimes I won't even hardly use my reel to reel the bait in. I'll cast it just dead off on a 45-degree angle and let that bait pendulum like the arm of a clock all the way until it's 12 o'clock in front of you. And then I'll just reel the bait in. Instead of like making its way back to the boat, I let it swing out all the way until it's in front of the boat and then bring it back in.
That's interesting. I mean, you're really working almost like a fly then, above your target and floating it down.
Yep.
Let's see. We got Brian here. We got Brian Lucas that says, is the swing head a good substitute for a jig? I like to wind it.
Probably not. If you're wanting something to move, you could use that swing head. It would probably work. Or you could use the crankbait like I was describing earlier. But that jig in the wintertime is meant to just get down in the hole and just stay there. I mean, I'm moving that thing so slow. The mistake I see a lot of people make is I don't have a rod with me, but they drop their rod tip too far down. And then when they come back with it, they don't realize, but the distance in their rod tip from where they started to where they ended is like 4 feet, 5 feet. So you're moving it 4 feet, 5 feet in that amount of time. I barely take my rod tip down a little bit and then just move it inches back to vertical. And then and that way you're just really, really keeping that thing in the hole. Because when you're jig fishing or tube fishing in the winter, it's just like, how long can you keep your bait down in the hole where it needs to be?
How long have you had to wait to get a bite before when it comes like soaking a tube?
A long time. On the new, the rocks are like so thick that this is getting so into the weeds. But the rocks are usually so thick you could get your jig down in there and you could get it like snagged, but it's not actually snagged. It's like on a rock lip, and then you can just like shake it sometimes. And I get a lot of bites doing that. And then you can give it a big pop to hop it over the rock. But I almost sometimes kind of drag it until it's touching a rock and then just shake it without it coming over the rock. And that seems like a really good technique in the winter.
Yeah, I think, guys, you got to understand, like, coming from the Shenandoah where we're dealing with ledges that cut across, you're talking like massive ass boulders. Like, this is not little Shenandoah type of deal that you're dealing with there.
Yeah.
Tubes. Shenandoah is famous for bitsy tubes. We're talking a 2-incher, a 2.5-incher, super tiny stuff. Are you going that small in tubes, or with the rusty crawfish you have, are you going to the other end of the spectrum?
I usually do throw that 2 3/4 inch tube. You could definitely throw, I bet, a 4-inch tube on the new, but I like throwing that foot. If I'm wanting a big on the bottom presentation, I'm doing that jig with a rage craw or something. And then if I feel like I have to go finesse is when I go to that little tube. So I've kind of found that I feel like if they're eating a big bait on the bottom, a big jig, I'd rather do the football jig than a big tube. And if I need to downsize off the big jig, that littler tube works better. So I throw like what I guess a normal size tube, a 3 to 4 inch tube sometimes, but I mainly go with actually the little tube or the jig.
Good stuff there. And then never a Ned rig. You're a tube man.
I throw the Ned rig a lot in the warmer months.
Interesting.
In the cold, I like the tube. Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Just cause?
It holds the bottom better. Like you could probably do what I do with the tube with like a specialty tungsten Ned head, but like the heaviest Ned head they make just doesn't hold bottom well enough. In the dead of winter, you do not want the current to be moving your jig when it's on the bottom. In like the spring or the summer or the fall, that's fine. But in the dead of winter, you want your bait to get down to the bottom, and you don't want the current moving it. You want it just
Sticks.
sitting. Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. All right, guys, we got 2 more questions to end up. So make sure you get your questions in here before we wind up. KD Fishing. I apologize. I can't read. How are you working the medium to high current areas when the fish are there feeding? I've had better luck on a wacky than a jerk/crankbait with a 8:2.1 ratio.
So we don't get like very many like busting schooling fish on the new, like fish schooling on bait fish. We can, I mean, it's not something that never happens, but we don't have like a huge shad or bait fish base. But in kind of medium to high current areas, if they're feeding, I'd throw a lot of topwater. Did really well with a walking bait this year, did really well with prop baits this year. And then like a fluke is just always a go-to when the fish are feeding, it seems like.
Yeah, and that's if you guys don't know about the new, they have rusty crawfish. I think it's the genome for them, and they look like lobsters. They can be big as my hand. Like that is, I'm assuming, the food source of preferred if they smallies could get it.
Oh yeah.
It's
we also got a ton of mad toms. They love those mad toms. They eat a lot of like sunfish, like bluegills, rock bass, I think. So they do eat like other fish. They love those crawfish, obviously. I think that's their main base. But yeah.
All right, guys. 2 more questions, and then we're going to wrap it up here. Let's see. We'll get, I guess, 3 more, and then we're done. If you had to pick one bait, this is from Everett Gardner, what would it be for the wintertime?
Probably that football jig. Probably like in most occasions in the winter, I'm only throwing 4 baits, and it's that jig, a tube, a crankbait, and a jerkbait. So, I mean, your arsenal doesn't have to be like huge in the winter. Find what works for you, find what you like, and roll from there.
And then we got this one from BCal. What was the craziest thing that happened while you were guiding? It doesn't have to be or was it just the kid drinking the water?
No, we've had storms just go from like a beautiful day to hailing and thunder and lightning. We like saw a wildfire start one day. We were out there and there was a storm, and the hillside near us got hit, and we saw smoke coming off it. And then like the next day, that was a huge wildfire. It was actually a pretty big fire. That was last fall. Seen deer, seen bears, seen otters. I've had musky bite smallmouth off the hook. Just kind of anything you can think of. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, guys. I'm just kind of cleaning out these questions here because you guys are just bringing them in fast and furious. I'm going to turn off the chat here in a minute. I have a Patreon member question here that I want to make sure I get, which is, today is my 40th birthday, so I don't think I'll show up for the live stream. Please ask Ethan if I should bring the $200 worth of topwater lures I bought today for my trip with him in 5/1 and 5/4. I'm thinking it's May. Wait, April, May. In May. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, so that is usually kind of right when they start spawning, and they're kind of when they're right at their most aggressive before the spawn. And I do well with a slow topwater with either a popper or a prop bait in spawning areas. Just kind of, if you know the general area that they might be spawning, just get a popper there, and a real aggressive pop, but not a pop that moves at a ton of distance. And you kind of just keep it right in the area that you think that they're going to be territorial about, and just kind of big, slow pops. But yeah, topwater can be really good kind of back half of April or early May.
Awesome stuff. So we're going to go with Travis Cyber. You want a gift card to Jerkbait and Tackle. Your question was, you went out with Brian Peeler the other day. Make sure you get a hold of me. And then we're going to go with Karan. That's not right. Ken, if you're seeing this, you just want a gift card to Jerkbait and Tackle. Sorry I butchered your last name. I can't speak. And then we got one more here, which is Rodney French. Kind of what I figured. You got another one there that was a question, but you just want a gift card too. And then the last question of the evening was this one for Stephen Lloyd Fishing. What stretch of the New River do you guide in above Radford? Also, what type of boat are you fishing out of? Jet, prop? Did you want to answer that one?
So I fish from the Claytor Lake Dam to the West Virginia border. So everything downstream of Claytor Lake in Virginia. So that's Radford and north. But yeah, and I got out of a raft, a 16-foot Moravia. I'm in the middle on the oars and somebody in the front and the back. Got a major upgrade this year. One of my clients gifted me as a wedding gift a little 4-horse Mercury, so I'll be
holy crap, dude, that's awesome.
Around a little bit, which will be good for just covering some of kind of the dead water between good spots,
saving your back.
yeah. But the New River, I mean, it's fierce, it's rocky, it has big rapids. You can have a jet boat, and a lot of people do have jet boats, but if you want to be able to get to all the spots and fish, even if it's low water in the summer, you got to have a raft or something of that sort.
One last question came across Instagram. This is a really interesting one here. Is because there's so many muskie, would you suggest people having a wire leader when they're fishing down there for smallmouth?
No. No, I have lost many a Vision 110 to a musky. Usually I think the wire leader would be just too much overkill for a bass. But if you're musky fishing, it's something you could consider for sure. But if you're bass fishing, definitely not, I would say. But
awesome stuff, dude.
Before we get off of here, kind of what we're offering right now is our spring trophy package, which is 2 days fishing and 2 nights in our cabins. Our cabins are called Walker Creek Retreat. You could look them up on Facebook or Instagram or online. Beautiful cabins. So 2 days, 2 nights. That's probably our most popular package. We are booking all year. We've decided to extend a package to all year. So now we're having also what we just call the smallmouth package, and that's from June until November. And that's also 2 days, 2 nights. But we also just do 1 day fishing or more than 2 days fishing, however you want to do it. I will say last spring was insane. I want to get it right, but I think last March alone, me and my clients caught 41 citations, April 25. So March and April, if you're looking to catch a 20-plus inch smallmouth, seems to be the prime time.
Yeah, and then as always, guys, I already have linked in the episode description to this live stream, everything, Instagram, Facebook, their email address, phone number, and a link to their cabin rental. Did you want to promote a little bit more just the cabin rental? Like, what is that close to the river? Did you want to pimp that out some more?
Yeah. So the cabins are on Walker Creek, which is a big tributary of the river. They're beautiful cabins. Cabins isn't even like a good word for them. They're like homes. We rent them on Airbnb and VRBO and such. But it's just a really kind of great deal. I usually meet the guys at this little country store that's about 3 minutes from the cabins, and I meet them there in the morning and we head on to the river. So there aren't a ton of lodging options in our area. So kind of just coming and doing the fishing and staying in the cabin, we'll take care of you. It's a really fun trip and an affordable trip.
Awesome stuff. And then, guys, like I said in the very beginning, I linked all this into the episode description, and I also put it in the comment section for this. How this is going to work, because YouTube didn't upload Monday's episode. This will be re-uploaded to YouTube, Spotify, Apple, iHeart, all those places on Thursday. And then today's episode, which was the oldest bass club in Maryland, is going to do Tuesday tomorrow morning. So this will still be available unlisted if you guys want to finish watching it. And then it'll get re-uploaded on Thursday with all of its praise and glory. Please go check Ethan out. Keep him in business. He runs a fantastic guide service down on the New River, the Jurassic Park of Virginia, when it comes to smallmouth and musky fishing. As always, guys, like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. And also check out us on Patreon. We have a winter tournament going until December 28th. And as you guys know, we are starting casting for conservation in 2025 just to do help with supplemental fish stockings and also boat ramp restoration. If you guys that fish the Shenandoah, the Upper Potomac, you know there's a lot of shitty boat ramps, and apparently the state can't afford to like throw gravel down. That's what we want to try to change and try to help out some of these places. So like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time on Fishing the DMV. Bye. You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jerkbait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.